This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
Easter as a springboard to resurrecting relationships. Welcome back to another edition of Real Answers, a regular Wednesday feature during the Family Life Noon Report, where we discuss the issues that matter to families with licensed mental health counselor Christopher Anderson. Welcome back, Chris.
Great to be back.
Great to have you here. You know, with Good Friday and Resurrection or Easter Sunday just ahead, it felt like a really good time to explore, seizing on that theme a bit and trying to restore estranged relationships with loved ones, especially those who might not be believers. And, of course, with so many things, for a believer, that process really has to begin with making sure our hearts are right with God first.
You know, absolutely. And of course, our pastor at our church here in Olean refers to as the Super Bowl of our faith, and that is the resurrection of Christ on Resurrection Sunday here, coming up here this week. I mean, there's no better time than to really open up doors of discussion and really address this topic. Now, you know, Mark, we did address this not terribly long ago, and this was maybe sometime late last year, but what a great time to revisit this, because I know there's a lot of hurting folks out there, you know, with strange relationships with friends, family, parents, your adult children, all of these areas. And this is a great time to revisit this.
Yeah, because they're in such divisive times. People have been so divided, you know, whether it's politics or whatever, that there's probably more rifts out there than maybe there have been in the past. Reconciliation is wonderful, but it's almost never easy, especially for the one who has to take the initiative.
Absolutely. And again, we got to understand that it is going to be uncomfortable, and making sure your heart is right with the Lord first, and just really understanding that He's ultimately the one that's responsible to pull our estranged loved ones' hearts back to Him. As we're staying tight with Him and we're in relationship with Him and others that share our faith, that's how we know, and that's how we will understand when the time is right to reach out. It's going to be potential moments of discomfort. You know, no two situations are alike. And I will say this also, when we're talking about reaching out to loved ones who maybe are estranged, we got to be careful. If there's any kind of legal stipulations with regards to interacting with our loved ones, we need to make sure we exercise caution and not violate any legal agreements that are in place. But even in those situations, bathe the situation in prayer. Ask that the Lord brings someone else into the lives of those people who are, for whatever reason, whatever the circumstances are, if you're not able to really reach out yourself, pray that somebody else is put in their lives that will actually be able to do that for you.
Yeah, that is just so important in any situation like this. It's, like you said, just got to be bathed in prayer from start to finish.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, sometimes too, again, those that are closest to us or that have historically been close to us are the least likely to listen to us. And that's just the way it is. Even in the Bible, you know, the prophet was not accepted in his own hometown. Okay, so very similarly, we are not necessarily well received when it comes to faith, sometimes by those that we really love. And so again, praying for somebody else to be brought into their lives is so incredibly important.
You're listening to Real Answers. I'm Mark Webster, along with licensed mental health counselor Christopher Anderson. We're talking about Easter as a springboard for resurrecting relationships. You mentioned, you know, no two situations are the same. I guess we should maybe try to tackle a few practical avenues to pursue. Okay, we've decided, we want to pursue this reconciliation. How do you actually go about it?
Yep. Because it's of the nature of the week that we're in right now, celebrating the resurrection on this coming Sunday, and then, of course, Good Friday. You know, there's already a propensity that folks have to be thinking in terms of faith, and even folks that might be just marginally connected to the faith are much more likely to accept the invitation. And of course, there's a call for pastors and, clergy to really knock it out of the park with a home run message. All right. And of course, go beyond the typical, but just really understand the significance, just again, the absolute significance of the resurrection and exactly what this means for us as believers and our world as a whole. In other ways too, Mark, to help break that ice, I guess you could say, and just allow some sort of reestablishment of communication. Sometimes it's hard to do it right away with a verbal or a face-to-face conversation. So I've said it before on, various segments here, writing letters, sending cards to open up channels of communication is a great way to start that without it being unnecessarily awkward. But at the same time, you might have to take some ownership and responsibility for any roles that you have maybe played in the degradation of a relationship. But at the same time, don't overcompensate. Don't over-apologize for things that really aren't your responsibility just because you're hoping that that'll make it easier for the other person. Okay, you don't want to do that either. But accepting that responsibility that you do have in a situation like this is definitely going to go a long way to help restore at least the channels of communication with our loved ones. And then, of course, pray. let your inner circle know in your church or in your Christian support network what you're hoping to see happen so they can pray for you. And also so they can pull up alongside you and give you personal support during this time, okay? And then, of course, finally, remember, it might take some time. It might not happen right away. But remember, your role is however God leads your heart. His role is to lead the other person's heart to the same spot. So could take some time, but this is definitely a season of hope.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned card writing or maybe sending a note. April just happens to be card and letter writing month. I looked that up. So
no better time to do it than April, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, even if it is a text, whatever, just reaching out, that first step, something.
Yeah, I would say, though, if you can avoid electronic communication, I would do that.
I guess you got to know your audience, what they might be most receptive to.
Exactly. I've had folks say, well, if I send a letter or a card, they're not going to read it. Well, I'm going to challenge that line of thought, because the reality is, when was the last time you received a personally addressed piece of first-class mail that came from somebody that you actually didn't read?
And when's the last time you got anything in your mailbox you were actually excited to see? It's pretty rare. And I guess to circle back lastly, you touched on this, that this can be a process. As a certain Bills coach used to say, trust the process. And so you have to have patience. I was thinking back to the Easter theme that just like the disciples had to have patience between the crucifixion and Christ's resurrection, reconciliation might not happen on your timetable. So you really do have to give it time.
You do. And and it might require more than one attempt. I've had clients where their adult children have stopped communicating with them, but I encourage them, on their birthdays and other times of the year, to just drop a quick card or a note. Doesn't have to be extensive, especially if it's a real tenuous situation. But again, if there's any kind of legal stipulations, you got to be careful with that.
Like that old phone commercial used to go, reach out and touch someone,
That's right.
Take that first step. You've been listening to Real Answers, a Wednesday feature of the Family Life Noon Report, where we talk about the issues important to families with licensed mental health counselor Christopher Anderson. Thanks as always, Chris.
Great to be here, Mark. Have a great Resurrection week, everyone.
You too.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.